The morning began like any other in Ashridge Park. A crisp breeze rustled the golden leaves, early joggers nodded politely to one another, and the scent of coffee and freshly cut grass drifted on the air. But that morning would be the last time the town of Ashridge felt ordinary. Officer Luke Harrison didn't notice anything unusual until his K-9 partner, Rex, suddenly locked up, ears pointed, tail rigid, his entire body focused like a coiled spring. They were midway through their regular patrol when Rex halted near the old Civil War statue, the one no one ever really looked at anymore. Rex growled low, his deep German shepherd bark erupting like a gunshot. Then again, and again, all of it aimed directly at the base of that mossy, cracked stone statue of some forgotten Union general. Luke blinked, eyebrows knitting. "Rex, what is it, boy?" But Rex wouldn't budge. He dug his claws into the dirt, lips curled, barking more fiercely now, louder, sharper, until nearby pigeons scattered and a woman pushing a stroller turned her head. Luke took a few slow steps forward. The statue had always struck him as out of place, too tall, too clean despite decades of exposure. Beneath it, a rectangular stone pedestal, discolored with mildew. Rex circled it, nose pressed to the cracks, sniffing wildly before he stopped at one spot on the far side and started scratching at the earth. Luke crouched next to him, brushing leaves and dirt aside. Something metallic clinked under his boot. "Hang on," he muttered. At first glance, it looked like an old irrigation cap or maintenance cover. But there were no utility lines on this side of the park. He tapped it, hollow, not a pipe, not city equipment. He called it in. 15 minutes later, yellow tape fluttered in the breeze as a perimeter was set. Joggers stopped to watch. A young boy on a scooter asked his mom if the police had found treasure. Luke stood off to the side with Rex, who still paced, tail down, tense. His partner didn't act like this for drugs or explosives. This was different. "What's the read?" asked Detective Claire Moreno, her sharp eyes narrowing as she knelt beside the spot Rex had barked at. "It's not on any city schematics," Luke replied, arms crossed. "No reports of wiring, no water lines. But it's metal, rectangular, and bolted." Claire whistled low and looked toward Rex. "You sure your guy's not just picking up an old raccoon nest?" Luke shook his head. "Rex doesn't make mistakes. Not like this." She gave a short nod, then waved over a crime scene tech with a bolt cutter and crowbar. The metal hatch was rusted at the hinges but gave way with a loud groan, revealing a dark opening beneath. A faint odor rose from below. Not rot exactly, but old moisture, mold, something stale and long-sealed. Claire leaned in. "Ladder, steel, leads down maybe 10 feet. She clicked on her flashlight. The beam disappeared into the gloom. Luke tugged on Rex's leash. "Let's go." "No," Claire said firmly, putting a hand on his chest. "Standard sweep first. I'm not risking you or your dog until we know what's down there." Luke hesitated, hands still on the harness. Rex whined low. By noon, more units had arrived. A mobile command post was set up on the edge of the park. A drone was sent down into the hole with a mounted camera. The footage showed a concrete room, 10 feet wide, 8 feet across. One small light fixture in the ceiling. A steel table in the corner. Chains. Gasps rippled through the unit as the camera passed over what looked like shackles, anchored into the wall. On the floor, a faded towel, red stains barely visible. The drone turned toward one wall and froze. Letters were carved into the concrete. "I never left." Claire stepped back from the monitor, face pale. "What the hell is this?" Luke felt his stomach twist. He looked down at Rex, who was now lying flat, body low to the ground, ears twitching but silent. His stillness somehow more unsettling than the barking. "Let's get a team in hazmat down there," Claire ordered. This wasn't just some old shelter. "Or a bunker," someone muttered behind her. "No," Luke said quietly, eyes locked on the screen. "That was a cell." That evening, while the sun dipped behind the trees and reporters started setting up at the edge of the park, Luke sat alone with Rex in the patrol SUV. The dog was unusually quiet. He kept staring at the statue. Luke turned off the radio and rested his hand on Rex's head. "You found something, didn't you, buddy?" "You knew." Rex leaned into his palm. That statue had stood in the park since 2001, donated anonymously after a small renovation. No one had ever questioned it, just another chunk of forgotten history. But now everything about it screamed deliberate, a monument placed with purpose, on top of something someone didn't want found. And somehow a dog knew. Around 9 p.m., Claire returned with a grim look on her face. "There's more," she said. Luke straightened. "What do you mean?" "There's a secondary door in the room. hidden behind a false wall panel, locked tight. We've got a forensic locksmith on the way. Rex stood up, ears alert again. Luke exhaled slowly, the air thick with tension. Do we have any idea how long it's been there? Claire didn't answer right away. Then she handed him a plastic evidence bag. Inside was a faded photo, Polaroid style. A girl, maybe 16, with a bruise on her cheek and wide, terrified eyes. Date stamped April 22nd, 2001. Luke stared at it, heart hammering. She was real, he whispered, and she was down there. Claire nodded, eyes heavy. This wasn't some long-abandoned shelter. This was a prison. Someone built it, hid it, right beneath our feet. Luke looked over his shoulder, back toward the statue that had stood for over 2 decades, passed by thousands of people every week. And he realized something chilling. This wasn't just about hiding her, he said. Claire raised an eyebrow. Then what? He clenched his jaw. This was a message. The forensic locksmith arrived just after 11 p.m. A no-nonsense woman named Diane Huxley, gray-streaked hair pulled into a messy ponytail, sleeves rolled up as she examined the concealed door at the back of the underground chamber. Whoever put this in wasn't just trying to keep people out, she said, tapping a flashlight against the heavy steel casing. They were trying to make sure nothing ever came out. Luke Harrison stood beside her, arms crossed, one hand resting on Rex's collar. The German shepherd hadn't left his side since the trapdoor was opened. Rex wasn't barking now, just staring, eyes trained on the sealed panel like he was waiting for it to breathe. Diane inserted a thin borescope into the crack between the frame and the door. What do you see? Claire Moreno asked, her voice low. Diane tilted her head, adjusting the angle. Looks like a narrow corridor beyond it. Concrete walls. I can't see the end. The tension in the air thickened. Luke exhaled slowly. Can you open it? Diane gave a faint smirk. That's what they called me for, right? By midnight, the door groaned open. Behind it, a passageway just 4 feet wide and 7 feet tall, stretching maybe 20 feet before bending out of sight. The air wafting out was musty, laced with mildew and something harder to place, like rust and decay. No signs of recent use, said one of the forensic techs, sweeping the area with a portable UV light. No footprints, not even rodent droppings. It's like this place has been sealed airtight. Claire clicked on her radio. Full sweep team, ready, nobody goes in alone, full body cams and masks on. Let's see where this leads. Rex pulled slightly on his leash, nose twitching. Luke gave a nod. He goes with me, he said. Claire hesitated. Luke locked eyes with her. He's the reason we're even standing here. She gave a reluctant nod. Fine, but stay behind the lead. The tunnel was narrow enough that their shoulders brushed the walls. Luke ducked slightly as he moved forward. Rex at his side, his vest marked clearly with K9 in bold white lettering. The light from their helmets bounced off the stained concrete. Occasionally, the walls bore faint scratches, horizontal lines like someone had scraped them with a sharp object. 10 feet in, they passed a dented tin tray and a plastic fork lying on the floor, both covered in a thin layer of dust. Someone had eaten here. The passage bent left into a small room. Luke stopped cold. A twin-size cot sat against the wall, its mattress warped and damp with age. On the far wall, shelves lined with notebooks, dozens of them, spiral-bound, most with yellowed pages. One of the officers lifted a book carefully, shining his light on the cover. Journal, 1999. Claire reached for latex gloves. Get these cataloged immediately. But Luke's attention was on Rex. The dog had wandered to the corner of the room where the concrete floor met the back wall. He sat down, sniffed, then looked up at Luke and whined softly. Luke knelt beside him. What is it, boy? He brushed away the debris. A slight bulge in the floor caught his eye. Tapping it produced a hollow sound. Claire, he called out, we've got something else. 2 hours later, after jackhammers cleared the cement panel, they found a small crawl space, no larger than a closet. Inside was a rusted metal box locked with an old padlock. Inside the box, newspaper clippings, cassette tapes, a cracked photo frame, and a child's stuffed rabbit. Claire pulled one clipping from the stack and read aloud. Teen runaway missing, family fears. Worst April 2000, 16-year-old Casey Fulton disappeared from a youth correctional program on the outskirts of Ashridge. Last seen wearing a red jacket and blue jeans. Tip hotline established. Luke felt his throat tighten. He remembered that name. The flyer had been in every post office for miles. They never found her, he said. Claire shook her head. Not until now. She lifted the cracked photo frame next. The glass had shattered inward. The image showed a girl, young with brown curls and braces, standing in front of the very same statue in Ashridge Park. She was here, Claire whispered. Whoever she was kept right under that thing. Luke glanced at Rex, who sat silently beside the box. The dog hadn't made a sound, hadn't moved a muscle. This whole place, Luke murmured, was built to erase people. As dawn broke, a light rain began to fall over Ashridge. News vans were already setting up along the sidewalk, their antennas stretching toward the sky like skeletal fingers. The city was about to wake up to a very different reality. Inside the precinct's conference room, Luke sat beside Claire as the FBI's behavioral analysis unit began to arrive. One agent, a tall man in his 50s with a southern accent and cold, sharp eyes, reviewed the early evidence with the team. "You said the original statue was donated anonymously?" the agent asked. Claire nodded. In 2001, it was part of a park beautification project funded by a private trust. Name of the trust? She clicked through her file. WC Holdings. The agent paused. Walter Creighton. Luke sat up straighter. Who is he? Private therapist. Licensed in Missouri and Idaho in the early 90s. Shut down in 1998 after abuse allegations surfaced, never charged. Name vanished from all public directories in 2000. Claire's eyes narrowed. You think he moved here under a different name? The agent folded his arms. I think someone with money and connections wanted to keep doing what he was doing, quietly. Later that afternoon, Luke walked Rex through the park again. This time there were no joggers, just reporters behind caution tape and a city worker covering the statue with a black tarp. Rex stopped again near the base, nose pressed to the ground. He let out a soft growl. Luke knelt beside him. Easy, buddy, we're not done yet. He stood up, looking around. The layout of the park now felt deliberate. Another statue sat on the far side, a bronze eagle on a stone pillar. It was installed at the same time. Same donor, same plaque design. Luke narrowed his eyes, his heart thudded. He clicked his radio. Claire, it's me. You need to get down here. Her voice crackled back. What is it? I don't think this was the only one. The rain had stopped by the time Claire arrived at Ashridge Park. Luke stood near the second statue, the bronze eagle perched high on a stone pedestal, talons outstretched, wings spread wide like it was protecting the field behind it. It had always seemed like nothing more than decoration, something patriotic, something safe. But now it felt like a threat, like an echo of something darker. Rex was at Luke's side again, pacing slightly, tail held low, nose working overtime. He hadn't barked yet. But Luke had seen that same alertness earlier, back at the first statue. Claire stepped through the barrier and joined him. This the one? Luke nodded. Installed the same year, same anonymous donor, same material, same foundation design. She examined the base, running her hand along the edge. Any sign of access? Luke pointed. Backside has loose gravel, just like the first one. Rex keeps circling it. Claire dropped to one knee and brushed away the dirt. Her fingers tapped something hollow beneath the soil. They locked eyes. Within an hour, the second statue was surrounded. Police cordoned off the area. This time, the mayor had been briefed and reluctantly gave the go-ahead for excavation, even as reporters shouted from behind the yellow tape. Luke stayed close, watching silently as a team of forensics dug around the base. Rex sat beside him, unmoving but visibly tense. His ears flicked at every clang of metal against stone. Claire crouched at the edge, flashlight in hand. Same deal, hatch beneath the pedestal. Another officer called out. Bolted, rusted solid. Gonna take a grinder to get it open. Luke stepped closer. Let me go in with Rex when you do. Claire didn't argue this time. After what Rex had uncovered under the first statue, she knew better than to underestimate his instincts. The hatch creaked open to reveal another ladder, another dark drop into the unknown. The difference was, this one smelled worse, like wet wood, mildew, and something else underneath. Something chemical, sharp, metallic. Luke descended first with Rex, flashlight mounted to his shoulder. Claire followed behind, her service weapon drawn and eyes alert. The chamber below was smaller than the last. No furniture, no cot, just a small concrete floor, stained in patches, and a single chair bolted to the ground with leather straps hanging limp from its arms. Claire shivered. This was a holding room, Luke nodded grimly. Or an interrogation room. Rex whined low and padded forward. He sniffed at the floor, then suddenly backed up, tail between his legs, growling. Claire stepped beside Luke. What's he picking up? Luke knelt, feeling the floor. Blood, maybe. Chemical residue. You smell that? Bleach, Claire said, grimacing. Someone tried to cover their tracks. Along one wall was another false panel, just like the first site. But this time they didn't need a borescope. Rex found the hidden latch with his paw. Behind it, another tunnel. The passage stretched deeper than expected. This one didn't bend. It sloped downward. Each step felt colder, damper. A chill settled into Luke's bones as they moved forward, the air heavy with mildew and something more sour, like rotting plastic. The walls bore scrape marks, fingernail scratches. Someone had tried to claw their way out. Claire stopped suddenly. "Hold up." Luke froze. She pointed ahead. "There's light." At the tunnel's end was a faint orange glow flickering, like an old emergency bulb still clinging to life. It illuminated a room no larger than a garden shed. Inside were two items: a rusted cot with no mattress, and a camera mounted on a tripod aimed at the cot. No power cables, just an old camcorder, dust-covered, a relic of the early 2000s. Luke slowly approached and pulled a small drawer from beneath the cot. Inside, a plastic bag containing several old VHS tapes, each one labeled with a year: 1999, 2000, 2001. Claire cursed under her breath. This is a recording site." Luke's jaw tightened. "They filmed whatever happened here." He turned toward Rex, who sat at the entrance, silent and still. Claire whispered, "This isn't just about hiding what they did. They wanted to keep a record." Back at the station, Claire called in the FBI's digital forensics team. By mid-afternoon, they'd converted the first VHS tape into digital format. Claire, Luke, and the FBI agent, Special Agent Monroe, gathered in a secure viewing room. The screen flickered, grainy and unstable, before stabilizing. A girl sat on the cot, young, maybe 15, pale, shaking. Her hands were bound. She looked directly at the camera for several seconds. Then someone off-screen spoke. "Say your name, loud." The girl flinched, then whispered, "Casey Fulton." Luke's blood turned to ice. Claire's hand trembled as she paused the footage. "That's the girl from the newspaper clipping." Monroe leaned forward. "We need every inch of that footage reviewed. Audio, background, voice print analysis." Luke looked away, jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. She was down there, and nobody knew. Claire didn't speak. She couldn't. That evening, Luke drove back to the park. The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows over the playground and benches. The statues had been completely wrapped in black tarps now, silent monuments to horror. Rex hopped out of the SUV and immediately turned, sniffing the air. Then, without hesitation, he began trotting toward the far side of the park. Luke followed. Rex stopped near a third statue, a metal sculpture of a globe with interlocking hands underneath, supposedly a symbol of unity and peace. Rex growled low. Luke crouched beside him, heart pounding. Not again. He pressed his palm to the base. Hollow. He clicked his radio. "Claire, we've got another one." By 9 p.m., they confirmed it. Third hidden chamber, third underground passage. Another room filled with restraint equipment, Polaroids in a chilling detail. A stack of ID cards, clipped together with a rusted paperclip. All from girls aged 14 to 17. All listed as runaways, all missing between 1998 and 2003. Claire stood staring at them, shaking her head. This was a whole operation. Luke swallowed hard. How did no one notice? Not one neighbor, not one report? Monroe stepped into the room holding a file. They were good at hiding in plain sight. Used front companies, untraceable donors. They had money, connections. He turned to Rex, who sat quietly near the wall, head tilted. "You know what's scary?" Monroe said. "Without that dog, we might never have found any of this." Claire nodded slowly. Rex didn't just find a clue, he found a pattern. Luke looked down at his partner. "And I don't think he's done yet." The precinct conference room had turned into something resembling a war room. Maps, photographs, floor plans, and evidence boards lined every inch of available wall space. 3 underground rooms, 3 hidden chambers, 3 statues tied to a single, long-forgotten trust, and a canine who had just found a fourth. Claire Moreno stared at the aerial drone photo of Ashridge Park. She marked the locations of the previous 3 statues and added the latest dot, far corner of the park, near the creek bed. Her marker circled it twice. "There's a pattern here," she muttered, "symmetrical, triangulated, all surrounding the memorial center." Across the room, Luke sat quietly with Rex at his feet. The dog had finally calmed, though his eyes still flicked toward the window any time a siren passed. Luke rubbed his thumb along Rex's collar. We were walking past that statue for years, he said softly. How many people did? Too many, Claire replied. Special Agent Monroe stood beside a corkboard covered in photocopied ID cards. The ones found at the third site. 15 of them. 15 faces. Some smiling, some vacant. Most of them girls. All listed as runaways. All forgotten. Until Rex. Monroe turned to the room. We believe we're looking at a serial operation that functioned between 1998 and 2003. 3 to 5 victims per year abducted from surrounding townies. Brought here, held underground. Claire's voice was hoarse. Used, filmed, and dumped. Luke asked the question no one wanted to. Do we know where they were taken afterward? Monroe paused, then said quietly, not yet. Later that afternoon, Luke and Claire met with a woman named Gwen Carter, one of the only surviving family members of a listed victim. Her niece, Amy Rios, had vanished in 2002. She was 15. Gwen sat on a bench outside the precinct, nervously twisting her wedding ring. She'd been 40 when Amy went missing. She was now in her early 60s. Her hair was gray, her voice shaky, but her eyes were sharp. She was a good girl, Gwen said, voice cracking. She liked sketching animals, wanted to be a vet. Everyone thought she ran away. She looked at Luke. But I knew she was scared of the dark. She would have never run off alone. Claire handed her a photo, one of the Polaroids recovered from the third chamber. Gwen covered her mouth, tears welling. That's her. Luke crouched beside her. We're going to find out what happened, Miss Carter. We won't stop until we do. She looked at Rex, who sat at Luke's side like a statue himself. He's the one who found her, isn't he? Luke nodded. He's the reason we're here. Gwen leaned over and gently touched Rex's head. Good boy. The fourth chamber was deeper than the others, almost twice as far underground. Luke descended the ladder first, flashlight beam dancing along the damp stone walls. Rex followed, feet careful on each rung before he hopped down to the floor. Claire and a forensic tech came next. This chamber was different. No chairs, no restraints, no cot, just boxes, stacked floor to ceiling. Plain cardboard, some with moldy water stains, others wrapped in plastic sheeting. Luke opened the nearest one. Inside, school uniforms, worn shoes, children's books. Each item tagged with a label, name, date, and a short description. He opened another. Teen diaries, torn pages, doodles. Then another. Hairbrushes, jewelry, notes from classmates. Claire's mouth went dry. They kept trophies. The silence in the chamber was deafening. These aren't just souvenirs, she whispered. These are inventories, catalogs. Rex whined softly and moved toward the far end of the chamber. Nose low, tail stiff. Luke followed. There in the corner was a wooden crate, unlike the others. Newer, cleaner. He forced the lid open and froze. Inside were 8 small metal lock boxes, one for each year from 1996 to 2003, each marked with a single word, final. Back at the lab, they pried open the boxes under supervision. Inside the one marked 1999, they found a Ziploc bag containing 2 items, a broken necklace and a small metal tooth crown, likely a dental cap from a young girl. DNA swabs were sent for immediate comparison. The 2001 box contained a full videotape and a blood-stained ribbon, but it was the 2003 box that struck the hardest. Inside was a faded letter, handwritten on lined notebook paper. If someone finds this, it means he's gone. We weren't all bad. Not all of us wanted this. Some of us were just trapped too. Claire's hands trembled. This wasn't a one-man operation. Luke stared at the letter. They had help. Monroe nodded grimly. This may go deeper than we thought. That night, Luke couldn't sleep. He sat on his porch, Rex at his side, watching the rain return. It drizzled quietly over the lawn, soaking the silence. In his lap was the list of names, missing girls, recovered IDs, photographs, victim logs, and still, they had only scratched the surface. He picked up one of the journals recovered from the second site, the one labeled Journal 2000. Most of it was incoherent scribbles, but one page stood out. It was neat, deliberate, a list of names followed by addresses. Each address was in a nearby city. Then below it, one word, recruited. Luke called Claire immediately. By morning, they were at the first address on the list, an old farmhouse just outside of Fairgrove, about 40 minutes from Ashridge. A rusted truck sat in the driveway, mail piled up, curtains drawn. A man answered the door, early 60s, beard, cane. He squinted at their badges, then said in a tired voice, I figured someone would come eventually. They exchanged a look. Inside the house, the walls were lined with books, religious symbols, and photographs of young boys and girls, some framed, some pinned. Claire gently pressed, "Ew, do you know why we're here, Mr. Grayson?" He sat down slowly and nodded. "I kept records. I didn't know what they were doing. Not exactly, but I knew it wasn't right." Luke sat forward. "You worked with them?" "Not by choice," Grayson muttered. "They said it was a reform camp. Help kids who'd gone off the rails. They paid well. Cash. Told me not to ask questions." Claire's eyes narrowed. "Who ran it?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "We called him Bishop. Never gave a last name. Wore suits, talked like a preacher, but didn't believe in anything but control." Luke's breath caught. "You know where he is now?" Grayson shook his head. "Disappeared in '04. Said he was going south." Claire leaned forward. "Do you have records? Anything with his real name?" He reached behind the couch and pulled out an old ledger. "I kept this in case they ever came for me. Not proud of what I didn't stop, but I'll help now." Back at the precinct, the team scoured the ledger. Bank transfers, addresses, lists of new recruits. At the bottom of one page, written in faint ink, "Statue number 5, Elmwood Church grounds." Claire looked up. "He buried one on church property?" Luke stood slowly. Rex, still resting at his feet, lifted his head, ears twitching. Luke whispered, "Looks like you got one more to find, buddy." Elmwood Church sat quietly at the edge of town, wrapped in ivy and silence. It was one of those small country churches that looked like it had been plucked from a postcard. White clapboard siding, a pointed steeple, a little cemetery tucked behind it. Generations had been baptized here, married here, buried here. No one had ever suspected that evil could be hidden beneath its well-swept grounds. Until now. The early morning sun filtered through the pines as Luke pulled up in his cruiser, Rex in the passenger seat. Claire and 2 FBI agents followed close behind. Luke stepped out and glanced across the lawn. There, tucked near the corner of the cemetery, was the statue. It was different from the others. Not military, not patriotic. This one was of an angel, head bowed, wings folded, innocent, gentle, almost sorrowful. But Rex didn't care about symbolism. The moment his paws hit the grass, he was off the leash, nose down, body tense. He circled the base of the statue, then stopped, dead, and then, head turned, tail straight, he let out a deep, guttural growl. Luke's jaw clenched. "It's here." Claire joined him, eyes fixed on the angel's base. "Same design, same stone. You think it leads to another room?" "I bet my badge on it," Luke said. Rex began to dig. They brought in the excavation team just after 9 a.m. The groundskeeper, an elderly man named Pastor Eli, stood nearby, wringing his hands. "I swear I didn't know," he kept saying. "This statue was here before I took over. Donated after the old chapel burned down in 2000. Luke tried to stay calm. "Do you remember who installed it?" Pastor Eli nodded. "The Creighton Family Trust. Same group that donated to the community center and the shelter." Claire looked up sharply. "They built the shelter too?" "Yes," Pastor Eli said. "They were generous folks. Said they believed in redemption." Claire muttered under her breath, "Redemption for who?" It took less than an hour to expose the hidden hatch beneath the statue's pedestal. This time, the metal plate was newer, coated in fresh paint, less rust, better sealed. Luke knocked on it, hollow. Claire knelt beside it. Someone kept this one in good shape. Luke said nothing. He clipped Rex's harness, adjusted the flashlight on his vest, and waited. When the hatch opened, the air that rushed up smelled different. Not rot, not mildew. Sterile, like bleach and disinfectant. Rex growled again. The descent was quiet, too quiet. The metal ladder led to a short hallway lined with cinder block walls painted white. Fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead. They were still functional. Claire stared at the lights. "This place has power." Luke scanned the walls. Generator somewhere, or tied into the church's grid. The hallway ended at a heavy steel door. Luke tried the handle. It opened easily. Inside was a pristine, windowless room. It looked more like a clinic than a prison. White tile floors, 2 hospital beds, a stainless steel sink, a cabinet filled with medical supplies. In the center of the room stood a desk, and on it, a laptop. Open, powered on, screen glowing. Claire blinked. "This place is active." Rex let out a sharp bark and moved toward the far wall. He scratched once, then again. Luke moved quickly, running his hand along the edge of the panel. Another false wall. Behind it, a narrow room lined with filing cabinets. They opened one drawer. Inside, folders, dozens of them, labeled with names and numbers. Claire pulled one at random and opened it. Name, Lydia Marks, age 15. Date of intake, May 2002. Status, completed notes. Recalibration sessions required. Response, aggressive. Outcome, unfit. Claire's hands trembled. This isn't just a list of victims. This is a log, medical, psychological, systematic. Luke opened another. Name, Kyle Benton. Age, 14. Status, reintegrated notes. Transferred to Facility B, rural placement. Claire whispered, they didn't just torture these kids. They tracked them. Some were moved. Luke's stomach turned. This was bigger than we thought. Back on the surface, Monroe arrived with a federal evidence team. The files, laptop, and medical equipment were loaded into vans for secure transport. Claire pulled Monroe aside. We've got a network, possibly interstate, multiple facilities, years of operations. Monroe nodded grimly, and no one blew the whistle. Luke joined them. Some of the folders mentioned Facility B. Any leads? Monroe flipped open his notebook. We've traced a few properties purchased by shell companies connected to the Creighton Trust. One of them matches. He handed Claire a printout. Abandoned Boys Ranch. Bought in 2001. Shut down in 2004 after a fire inspection failed it. But the structure's still there. Northern edge of Cascade foothills. Claire's face hardened. We go there next. Luke looked down at Rex. The dog was panting lightly but alert. You ready, boy? He asked. Rex barked once. Before heading out, Luke stopped by his house. He poured fresh water for Rex and leaned against the kitchen counter, letting the weight of the past few days settle in. He thought about Amy Rios, about the 15 other faces pinned to the evidence board, about Gwen Carter, whose tears stained Rex's fur when she realized someone finally believed her. He looked out the window past the quiet street. People trusted these places, he said aloud. They sent their kids there thinking it'd help. Rex padded up beside him and rested his head against Luke's leg. Luke ran his fingers behind the dog's ears. And you knew the truth was buried. His phone buzzed. Claire, we're rolling in 20. Bring Rex. The site's remote. No neighbors for miles. Luke grabbed his vest and Rex's harness. On our way. The drive to the Cascade foothills took over an hour. The terrain grew rougher, more isolated. Cell service dropped off halfway through. When they arrived at the old ranch, the sky was overcast, clouds hanging low over the trees. The property was fenced off, rusted signs warning of trespass and electrical hazards. But the gate was broken, left open. Claire stepped out of her SUV. We go in slow, no assumptions. This place could still be in use. Luke clipped Rex's leash and nodded. Let him lead. They moved in. The main building was 2 stories, weathered wood, windows boarded up. A barn sat nearby, collapsed in the middle. Beyond that, a small chapel and what looked like a water tower. Rex sniffed the air, then took off. Straight toward the far side of the ranch, where a set of concrete steps led into a hillside. Claire sprinted after him. Underground again? Luke shouted, hold him back! But Rex reached the door first and stopped. His ears went flat. His tail dropped. He didn't growl. He whimpered. Luke's blood ran cold. The steel door was locked. Claire tried the handle. Nothing. Monroe's agents worked quickly, cutting through with a torch. As they opened the door, a burst of stale air rushed out, hot and metallic. Inside was darkness. Luke clipped on his flashlight and led the way, Rex behind him. Claire followed, weapon drawn. The tunnel sloped downward into what looked like a large, open chamber. At first, it was hard to see. Then the beam hit something on the far wall. A mural, children, painted like a school project. But their eyes were scratched out, each face blurred in black paint. And underneath, written in large block letters, they never listened. Claire stepped forward, stunned. What is this place? Luke walked toward the mural, heart pounding. Rex stayed frozen at the entrance. As Luke scanned the rest of the room, something caught his eye. A faint, blinking red light in the far corner. A security camera. Still active, still recording. Luke raised his voice. Someone's been watching. Then they heard it. A voice. A speaker crackled on, hidden somewhere in the ceiling. And it said just one word. Welcome. The voice crackled from the hidden speaker above, distorted by static and time, but unmistakably human. Luke froze mid-step. Rex remained rooted near the threshold of the chamber, tail tucked slightly, his eyes locked on the dark corners of the room. The word echoed off the concrete walls like a ghost that had been waiting years to be heard. Claire raised her weapon, sweeping it slowly across the ceiling. Is that a live feed or a recording? Luke didn't answer. He was already scanning the walls, flashlight beam bouncing until it caught the blinking red light of the surveillance camera. Mounted in the far corner, fixed directly on them. Another crackle, then silence. Agent Monroe's voice came through the comms. We've lost external video. Our drone feed just blacked out. Claire responded quickly. We've got a camera in here, still active. Someone knew we were coming. Luke stepped forward cautiously. The room stretched wider than he expected, like it had been carved deep into the hillside over time. Old mattresses lined the far wall. Some were stained. One was chained to the floor. A steel drain sat in the center of the room. Claire's voice dropped to a whisper. This was a holding area. No, Luke said. This was a processing area. He walked toward the blinking camera, Rex slowly trailing behind. Beneath the camera, tucked into a small, concrete recess, was a monitor. It was off. Next to it sat a weathered keyboard, its keys dusty but intact. Luke tried the spacebar. The screen blinked to life. The monitor displayed a grid of surveillance footage. 16 live camera feeds, most showing dim, empty hallways and rooms, all underground, all sterile. One of them showed Luke and Claire from above. Another showed Rex at the doorway. Claire leaned in. Multiple facilities. Luke scrolled through the feed. Some of the rooms were clearly abandoned. Others weren't. In one feed, a calendar still hung on the wall. September 2020. Luke muttered, someone was here recently. Then the screen flickered and a face appeared. A man, middle-aged, balding, his skin pale, lips thin. His expression didn't move, like he was waiting for something. Luke stared at the monitor. Is this live? Claire whispered, we need to pull the drives. Get the signal source. The man finally blinked. Then he spoke. You're late. The voice matched the earlier one, calm, controlled, like he'd rehearsed this for years. You've dug up graves, but you've missed the funeral. Claire leaned in. Who are you? I was a teacher once. Then I became a shepherd. Now I'm just the last witness. Do you know what's worse than evil, officers? Indifference. The screen flickered again, then went dark. Rex barked once, sharply, and ran to the right-hand wall, nose against the concrete. Luke followed. There, hidden behind another panel, was a locked metal door, unmarked. Claire called over her shoulder. We need a breach team now. Someone was here, maybe still is. Luke nodded. I'll take Rex through when it's clear. It took nearly an hour for the breach team to arrive and safely cut through the sealed door. What lay behind was a hallway unlike the others, carpeted with framed photos on the walls. Pictures of children lined up like school portraits, smiling, dressed up, labeled by year. Luke walked past one from 2002. The girl in the photo was holding a rabbit. A name was written in cursive below. Emily T. Claire's hands shook as she pointed to the next one. This girl was on the missing persons board. Luke nodded grimly. They took the kids, then made them part of this place. Farther down the hall, they entered what looked like a study, furnished with bookshelves, a leather chair, a fireplace long extinguished. On the desk sat a journal, thick, leather-bound. Luke opened it. The handwriting inside was neat, precise. Each child had potential. Some were too broken. Others were raw material. We offered structure, order, a future without corruption. Claire recoiled. He believed this was therapy. Those who failed were not lost. They were purged. Reform requires sacrifice. Luke slammed the book shut. He thought he was saving them. One room over, the team found what looked like a surveillance hub. Multiple monitors, some cracked, others still running off backup batteries. They showed other facilities, warehouses, classrooms, dorms. On one screen, a timestamp read live 9/18/25. A feed showed a hallway not part of the ranch. Newer, cleaner. Claire leaned in. That's not here. Luke's stomach sank. Facility B? Claire nodded. We've got to find it. Now. Monroe's voice came through the comms. We've triangulated the signal from that feed. It's bouncing between 6 server farms. Final location unknown. But we're on it. Luke looked down at Rex. We're running out of time. Later that evening, back at the precinct, the evidence board was covered with threads of red string. Photos, maps, surveillance stills, audio transcripts. The FBI confirmed that the Creighton Trust was a front organization, laundering funds through religious charities, behavioral schools, and private youth reform programs across state lines. The man on the screen had finally been identified. Dr. Vernon Hale, psychologist, former professor, fired in 1997 for inappropriate methods, went underground, started his own rehabilitation camps, disappeared in 2004. He'd been using the statues, the parks, and the churches to bury his facilities, to hide the past, to silence victims. Luke ran a hand through his hair. How many kids? Monroe didn't look up. We may never know. Claire stepped beside him. But we found them. Luke looked toward the hallway where Rex lay asleep beside the door, his tail twitching, even in rest. No, he said, Rex found them. The next day, Luke drove to visit Gwen Carter again. He brought with him a folder, one marked Amy Rios. Inside were records from Facility B. One entry stood out. Subject transferred to Red Willow Ranch, Montana, August 2002. Status inconclusive. Gwen read the line 3 times. She might still be alive? Luke nodded. It's possible. Gwen's eyes filled with cautious hope. Then find her. Luke put his hand on hers. We will. That evening, a breaking report aired on national news. K-9 unit uncovers secret underground network, decades of abuse hidden beneath public parks. The anchor described the statues, the missing teens, the man behind it all, Dr. Vernon Hale. At the end of the segment, they showed a picture of Rex, alert and proud beside Luke. Claire, watching from her apartment, smiled faintly. Good boy, she whispered. But in a cabin far from town, a man sat in front of a monitor, watching the same news broadcast. He sipped tea from a chipped cup and stared at the screen, expression unreadable. Then he turned off the TV. He opened a drawer. Inside, a new map, marked in red. At the top, a handwritten note. We were never the only ones. And below it, a stamped envelope addressed to E. Mallory, Director Willowbrook Behavioral Institute, Des Moines, IA. The man smiled, then whispered, Your move, Officer Harrison. The final location was barely a dot on the map, a desolate patch of overgrown land in rural Iowa, 2 hours south of Des Moines. The site was registered under a fake name, owned by a shell company connected to the Creighton Trust. But what tipped it off wasn't a document or surveillance drone. It was Rex. After weeks of searching, of piecing together data from torn ledgers, underground servers, and decades-old tapes, the K-9 officer had once again led them somewhere the evidence alone couldn't. Luke stepped out of the black SUV and scanned the property. It didn't look like much, just an old barn with a faded cross nailed above the entrance. The wind rustled through nearby corn stalks, the sound eerily rhythmic. Claire stood beside him, her vest zip-tight, her sidearm clipped firm. This is the address, last known asset under Hale's real name before he disappeared. Luke looked down at Rex, who sat upright in the back seat, eyes locked on the barn door. The dog let out a low, steady growl. He's here, Luke muttered. Claire's brow furrowed. Or what he left behind is. Inside the barn, the air was thick with dust and the sour tang of mold. But deeper in the back, hidden beneath a fake hay pile, they found a staircase. Wooden, old, but solid. It descended into darkness. No power, no camera feeds, no lights. Luke adjusted the flashlight on his vest, then turned to Claire. We go quiet. She nodded. Rex led the way, his paws careful but confident as they creaked against the stairs. The staircase opened into a long corridor, wider than the others they'd seen. The walls weren't concrete this time. They were wood-paneled, like someone had tried to make it feel normal. Homey. But the vibe was all wrong. Too clean, too quiet, too calculated. They passed doors marked with hand-painted signs. Reflection room. Reform hall. Silence wing. Claire whispered, This was more than a holding site. This was organized. They reached the final door. Solid steel. A keycard panel blinked dim red. Luke reached into his pocket and pulled out a card recovered from the ranch in Montana. The one marked Facility B, Level Admin. He held his breath and swiped. A loud click. The door opened. The room inside was unlike anything they had seen. It wasn't a cell. It wasn't a medical chamber. It looked like a study, a private sanctuary, lined with books, journals, maps of the Midwest, news clippings pinned to corkboards, all of them linked to missing teens, youth programs, park renovations, statue installations. At the center of the room sat a man, older now, gray hair combed neatly, glasses perched on the tip of his nose. He wore a white button-up shirt and sipped from a cup of tea as if he were reading the Sunday paper. Dr. Vernon Hale. Luke raised his weapon. Don't move. Hale didn't even flinch. I figured it would be you, he said calmly. The officer with the dog. Rex growled, low and steady. Claire circled the room, scanning for traps, tripwires, panic buttons. Nothing. Hale set the teacup down gently. Tell me something, Officer Harrison. Do you believe in rehabilitation? Luke gritted his teeth. Is that what you called all of this? Rehabilitation? Hale smiled faintly. No, I called it reconstruction. The world discards children. I gave them order. I gave them purpose. Claire snapped. You tortured them. I guided them, Hale replied. You buried them, Luke added. And the ones you never found? Hale asked, raising an eyebrow. They're out there, building better lives. Because of what I gave them. You only see the failures, officer. I see the legacy. Luke took a step forward, fury rising in his chest. You built that legacy on the bones of the innocent. Rex barked, sharp and fierce. And for the first time, Hale flinched. Hale was arrested without resistance. No backup plan, no weapon, no escape tunnel. As they walked him out, past the cornfields and rusted windmill, townsfolk began gathering on the distant road. News vans parked along the edge of the property. Word had spread. The man behind dozens, perhaps hundreds, of disappearances over 2 decades was finally in custody. But the story didn't end there. Inside Hale's study, they found a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. Inside, 2 external hard drives, 3 videotapes, and a handwritten list labeled Red Willow transfers. Claire and Luke sat at the precinct into the early hours, reading each name, matching each photo, cross-referencing the files with missing persons databases. 17 names stood out. 17 teens never recovered. One of them, Amy Rios. Claire's voice trembled. She was listed as reintegrated, but no exit location was ever logged. Luke rubbed his eyes, which means she's still out there. Or she was moved, Claire said. They both looked over at Rex, who lay near the door, eyes half closed, but ears still twitching. Luke whispered, "Think you've got one more in you, buddy?" Rex's tail thumped once. 2 weeks later, after dozens of interviews, court orders, and help from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, they got a break. A woman in Helena, Montana, claims she'd once housed a teenage girl in 2004 as part of a recovery program. The girl had no paperwork, no last name, just a first. Amy. She had a chipped tooth and drew rabbits in all her notebooks. Claire's hands trembled as she closed the file. It's her. The woman, now in her 30s, was located. A mother of 2, working at an animal shelter under a different name. DNA confirmed it. Amy Rios was alive. Luke and Claire drove up to meet her. Rex came too. She didn't speak for the first 5 minutes. Then she looked at Rex, eyes wide. That's the dog, isn't it? Luke smiled. He's the one who found you. She reached down and touched his head gently. I remember his bark. The arrest of Dr. Hale shook the country. Within weeks, more hidden facilities were uncovered. Some already abandoned, others repurposed into legal programs with dark origins. Congress opened a federal investigation into private youth rehabilitation programs. Dozens of cases were reopened. But none of it would have happened without Rex. The local community came together to build a memorial in Ashridge Park, where it all began. The Civil War statue was removed. In its place, a new bronze statue was unveiled. A German shepherd, mid-step, nose to the ground. At the ceremony, Luke stood with Claire and Rex. Dozens of families, survivors, and officers filled the park. Some cried, some clapped, some just stood in silence. Luke looked out at the crowd, then down at his partner. You found them, he whispered, one by one. You brought them home. 3 weeks later, the precinct received a letter, handwritten. No return address. You stopped one of us, but the river runs wide. Keep digging. E.M. Claire folded the paper, jaw tight. Luke stared out the window. We're not done, he said. Rex growled softly. Thank you for following this journey through all 7 parts of the story. From the first bark at an old statue to uncovering a hidden network of darkness, this tale reminds us that truth always finds its way to the surface, sometimes with the help of a loyal canine. Now we want to hear from you. What would you have done if your dog barked at something no one else noticed? Do you believe animals can sense what we can't? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe in justice, loyalty, and second chances, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. See you in the next story.